It's never too early to start studying for the LSAT. I'd recommend at least minimum 3 months, but preferably 5 to 6 months. So if you're thinking about this early in the process, you're planning, it's January now, you're planning on applying this fall, you have several months ahead of you to make a major impact. There are a couple of things I'd recommend for you. First off is get yourself a study plan. I have day-by-day study plans on my site. They will show you exactly what to do every single day over the entire course of your prep. The other thing I would say is make sure that you're getting and using real LSAT prep tests. Flashcards and things like that are not that useful. The LSAT is not a memorization test. It's a way of thinking. And the longer that you can expose yourself to that way of thinking, in particular the arguments, the logical reasoning section, which is half the exam, the better off you'll be. It takes time to absorb these things, and memorization is not the way. It's a more organic understanding where you actually come to change the way you think. You learn to think more critically and more skeptically, rather than falling prey to the typical logical fallacies that we're all prone to. From there, you could go deeper. You could get my courses. I have courses that cover all sections of the LSAT: games, reasoning, reading comp, also law school admissions, also test day mindset. Those are great general overviews. You could also get my written resources, the guides and the cheat sheets and the checklists. Those are all just things to consider along the way. But to start off, I would get the most recent books of actual LSAT exams. They're published in books of 10. You can get, at this point, 52 through 61, 62 through 71, 72 to 81, and then the others are individual booklets, which you can get later. But for now, just get at least one of those books of 10 exams. That'd be your best starting point, just to familiarize yourself with the different question types and what you're going to be tested on. I would not recommend taking a diagnostic test before going in, because it's only going to tell you what you already know, which is that you don't know the LSAT yet, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The LSAT is like learning a foreign language, and the results of a diagnostic test without any prep are typically pretty discouraging. So I would steer clear of that. Whether you do an in-person class or an online class or self-study with the books, that's really up to you. In-person classes have been dropping in popularity a lot in recent years because typically they are extremely expensive and you have a large class size. You typically have at least 30 people, sometimes even 50 to 70 people in one class with a single instructor. And you're not going to get personalized attention. If, on the other hand, you're able to take a class for free, then that's great. But again, you want the quality to be good, because although you might not be spending money, you're spending time. And your time is valuable. If a class is not serving you, then not only are you wasting time you could have been spending having fun, but you're also not going to want to spend that many more hours on top of that to do studying the right way. You only want to devote so many hours to the LSAT per week, which is reasonable. It's taxing, it's mentally taxing, especially if you're going somewhere after class or after work. It's a major time investment. Most people aren't fortunate enough to be able to study full-time doing nothing but LSAT prep. And I imagine that's not your position. So if this free class gets bad reviews, maybe visit it once, see how it strikes you. But otherwise, I would steer clear. And I would use the free resources and the LSAT exams, start there. And then if you are looking for more, which most people typically are, then you could look at online stuff. I've got a ton of free videos on my YouTube channel. But then if you want something more structured, I do have an online course. There are other good online courses out there as well. And they're typically much lower in cost than a quality in-person prep class. You could typically get an online course for under $1,000, and any in-person class is going to approach $1,300 or even $1,500, which is a lot. And you probably don't need it. The benefits of the online class, of course, are that you watch at your own pace, you can redo things, and yeah, it's a great thing to consider and try out before you plunk down even more. Start with the books on your own. Familiarize yourself with the basics. I'm not saying to take an exam and measure your results necessarily, but start studying. Again, you could use my study schedule just to get your feet wet. And once you find yourself hitting some roadblocks and Googling and forums and that sort of thing, if they're not doing it for you, if they're not helping you achieve a breakthrough in your understanding, then it's time to consider arming yourself with additional resources. And those could be additional written resources like prep books, or those could be online video resources like an online course. So I would say start with the books, start with free stuff, and then if that's not doing it for you and you need something more structured, then go deeper and research some potential options. It could be after a few weeks or a month. Basically, it's whenever you feel frustrated enough to the point where you think to yourself, I'm not going to be able to do it alone, and I need some additional resources. I need someone guiding me along the way. But again, it depends on your timeline. If you're studying for 5 or 6 months total, then you could afford to spend a month going it alone. If, on the other hand, your timeline is shorter and then time is of the essence and it's time to start thinking about getting help sooner rather than later. I'd say overall, look for help sooner, because that way you can implement any insights you gain in your own studying going forward. There's nothing more frustrating than just spinning your wheels and not making progress. Don't give yourself an artificial deadline in the future. If you feel like you need help, then seek it out. So if you're thinking about when to take the LSAT, I would recommend definitely taking it in June, because June is going to be the last paper and pencil test exclusively. Starting in July, half of test takers will get assigned paper and pencil, half will get assigned digital, and LSAC chooses for you, and you don't get any advance notice, which I think is ridiculous. So I really want you to avoid that situation. If you can, we're in January, you've still got a good 5 months or so, maybe 4 months until the June LSAT. So if you can, try to get it out of the way by then. Register for June ASAP, take it then, and hopefully be done with it. If not, then you'll be one of the first guinea pigs doing the digital, which I'd rather you avoid if you can. You can retake the LSAT whenever you want, and there's not really a downside to retaking since law schools don't average multiple scores. If you take it in June and it doesn't go well, I would recommend in advance registering for July just as a backup, so that way you only have a few weeks or a month as a gap and you can stay fresh and go for the retake. But if you need more time, then go for September. So you've got to do a little bit of planning ahead. Maybe you register for the LSAT and it ends up being for nothing, but at least you lock in your test center and you lock in your registration. It's annoying to pay a fee that you may not end up benefiting from, but it's just a drop in the bucket compared to the cost of law school tuition and all that. So if you have the summer free, go for July as your retake opportunity. But if you feel like you need more time and you want a few months, then go for September. Either way, you'll still be able to apply at the beginning of the cycle. And so it's not necessarily slowing you down in any way.